Every morning, just as the city begins to stir, Jasmine's day has already begun. Before the sun even peeks over the horizon, a small alarm clock cuts through the silence of her tiny apartment. For Jasmine, this isn't just a room, it's her sanctuary, filled with a simple bed, a table, and the warm faces of her family smiling from picture frames. She takes a deep breath, a quiet ritual to prepare for the day ahead. Life isn't easy, she reminds herself, but she is strong enough to face it. She pulls on her black and white waitress uniform, a second skin she's worn for nearly 3 years. As she ties her hair into a neat bun, she looks in the mirror and puts on a faint smile. This smile isn't for show. It's her armor, the shield that helps her endure the long, tiring hours. "You can do this, Jasmine," she whispers to her reflection before stepping out into the waking city. The bus ride to the downtown restaurant is a familiar blur of honking cars and the smell of morning coffee. At work, she's known as the polite waitress with the warm smile. She remembers regulars' orders, greets everyone with genuine kindness, and never loses her composure, no matter how challenging a customer might be. But behind that unwavering smile is a story few people know. Jasmine isn't just working to pay her rent. She's the sole provider for her younger brother Marcus, putting him through college. After their parents passed away years ago, Jasmine stepped up, becoming both a sister and a mother. She made a silent promise to give Marcus the life she never had, a life filled with opportunities and dreams. This promise fuels her through double shifts, day after day. In the mornings, she serves breakfast to regulars who are often lost in their own worlds. In the evening, she navigates a dining room of fancy customers, some of whom treat her as if she's invisible. She bears it all with quiet dignity. No one sees the exhaustion in her eyes after 10 hours on her feet, the blisters she soothes at night, or the silent tears she wipes away before walking through her front door. Jasmine knows the world can be tough, especially for a young black woman trying to make her way. But she refuses to be defeated. She believes in hard work, kindness, and holding on to her self-respect. When the pressure becomes too much, she finds a quiet corner, takes a deep breath, and tells herself, "One day this will all be worth it." Then she walks back out, her smile perfectly in place. Despite the hardships, she finds joy in the small moments. A child's giggle, a sincere thank you from an elderly couple, a precious minute to sip cold water and watch the world go by. These tiny pockets of peace are her lifeline. Every night, no matter how bone-tired she is, she cooks dinner for Marcus and listens to him talk about his classes, his friends, and his dream of becoming an engineer. His excitement is her reward. It makes her own sacrifices feel small. It is in these moments that she remembers her mother's words. "No one can take your strength if you keep your heart pure." Jasmine has her own dreams too, of traveling, of opening a small cafe where everyone feels welcome. But for now, those dreams are tucked away. Survival comes first. Every morning, as she looks in the mirror, she sees more than just a waitress. She sees a fighter. Her smile is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to her unbreakable spirit. The people she serves see a cheerful waitress. They don't see the woman who skips lunch so her brother can afford textbooks, the sister who carries the weight of a family on her shoulders. Jasmine doesn't want pity. She wants respect. She wants to prove that great strength can exist in silence. And on this particular morning, as she ties her apron and steps onto the restaurant floor, she has no idea her world is about to change. A single phone call is about to interrupt her routine, setting in motion a series of events that will test her strength like never before. But for now, she just smiles, the same warm, resilient smile that hides her struggle and radiates her strength to the world. The restaurant was a whirlwind of noise, clattering dishes, shouting chefs, and the hurried footsteps of waiters. Amidst this chaos moved Jasmine, a picture of calm efficiency. She navigated the crowded floor with a steady hand and a warm, constant smile. But behind that smile, she held a secret, a part of her life that remained hidden from everyone. Beneath her quiet exterior was an extraordinary talent. Years before, life had been different. As a student in a cultural exchange program in China, Jasmine had found her passion. She fell in love with the country, its people, and its language. Learning Mandarin was a challenge, but she was relentless. She practiced tones until her voice was hoarse and memorized characters every single day. Soon, she was fluent, earning the affectionate nickname Hua Mie, or Beautiful Flower, from her teachers. But when she returned home, tragedy struck. Her parents passed away, leaving her to care for her younger brother. Her dreams of becoming a translator or working in international business evaporated. She needed a job fast. The restaurant was her only option. She mentioned her Mandarin skills once during her interview, but it was quickly dismissed. Her new co-workers were skeptical, some even laughed. "You speak Chinese?" "Really?" they'd ask with disbelief. So Jasmine learned to keep her talent to herself, a hidden treasure locked away. It was easier to just be a waitress, to be obedient and silent. Still, she missed it. Sometimes she'd overhear tourists speaking Mandarin, and the familiar sounds felt like a hug from an old friend. She'd whisper a quiet phrase under her breath, just to feel the language on her tongue again. One evening, a Chinese couple came in, looking lost and confused. The hostess couldn't help them. Jasmine hesitated, then stepped forward. "Ni hao, ni hao," she said with a bright, welcoming smile. Their faces lit up instantly. Finally, someone who understood. Jasmine chatted with them in fluent Mandarin, helping them order their meal. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, her words flowing effortlessly. Her co-workers watched in stunned silence. "Is she really speaking Chinese?" one whispered. But her manager, Mr. Collins, just gave her a cold, disapproving stare. Later, he called her into his office. "So," he began, his arms crossed, "since when do you speak Chinese?" "Since college, sir," Jasmine replied politely. "I studied in Beijing." He scoffed. "You should have mentioned it." "I did," she said softly. He waved his hand dismissively. "Well, just focus on your tables. We don't need show-offs around here." His words hit her like a punch. Why was her skill seen as showing off? Why was competence something to be ashamed of? Walking home that night, she felt a wave of sadness. She remembered the respect she had earned in China, where her effort was celebrated, not judged. Here she was just a waitress, a face in a uniform. But even though her world didn't value her talent, Jasmine refused to let it fade. On her days off, she watched Chinese dramas and listened to podcasts, keeping the language alive within her. She held on to that hopeful, curious version of herself. Little did she know, fate was about to test her, to bring her hidden gift into the light in the most unexpected way. For now, she continued her work, serving food with quiet grace. But beneath the calm surface, a fire was waiting, ready for its moment to shine. And when that moment came, it would change everything. The next day started just like any other. The sun was struggling to peek through the city buildings. The air smelled like a mix of coffee and morning traffic, and Jasmine was already on the bus, caught in that space between being half asleep and half dreaming. She had no idea that this day was about to become the turning point of her entire life, the day everything she had kept hidden would finally come to light. When she arrived at the restaurant, the place was buzzing with an unusual energy. The manager, Mr. Collins, was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Waiters were rushing around, a blur of white aprons and stressed faces, and the chef was shouting orders from the kitchen. Something big was definitely going on. Jasmine hung her coat, tied her apron, and found her co-worker. "What's happening?" she asked. Her co-worker leaned in and whispered, "Some big-shot businessman is coming for lunch with his guests. Mr. Collins wants everything to be absolutely perfect." A rich businessman, a tycoon, people called him. His company supposedly owned half the real estate in the city. The staff was on high alert, polishing every single glass and plate twice, making sure not a speck of dust or a single crumb was out of place. Jasmine could feel the tension crackling in the air, but she kept her cool. She'd served difficult customers before. Wealthy people who never smiled, who snapped their fingers for attention, who saw kindness as a weakness. She had mastered the art of staying polite no matter what. By noon, the tycoon arrived. He was a tall man in his 50s, dressed in a sharp gray suit with a gold watch glinting on his wrist. His presence alone seemed to fill the entire room. He wasn't loud, but there was an undeniable aura about him, a quiet power that spoke for itself. As he walked in with his two assistants, everyone straightened up. "Good afternoon." Jasmine greeted him softly, leading them to their reserved table. She placed the menus gently in front of them and stepped back, her smile as warm and genuine as ever. The Tycoon gave a slight nod. He didn't seem unfriendly, just serious, like a man who had seen a little too much of the world. The lunch started off smoothly. Jasmine served the appetizers, kept their glasses filled, and made sure everything was just right. Mr. Collins hovered near the table, trying way too hard to impress the guest, whispering frantic orders to the staff like a nervous schoolteacher. Then something unexpected happened. The restaurant phone at the front desk began to ring. The hostess was busy with another customer, and no one else made a move to answer it. Since Jasmine was nearby, she went to pick it up. "Hello, Café Verlaine," she said softly. There was a brief silence, and then a voice began speaking rapidly in Chinese. Jasmine's eyes widened just a little. She recognized the language instantly. The caller sounded anxious, asking if Mr. Li, the Tycoon, had arrived. Without a second of hesitation, Jasmine switched languages. "您好，李先生已经到了，您需要我帮您转告他吗?" Her voice was calm, fluent, and perfectly respectful. The caller on the other end sounded relieved and thanked her before hanging up. When Jasmine turned around, the entire restaurant had gone silent. Every waiter, every customer, even the Tycoon himself, they were all staring at her. The air felt thick. Mr. Collins looked like he was frozen in time, his mouth hanging slightly open. The Tycoon's expression, however, was completely different. His eyes were wide, not with judgment, but with genuine, unfiltered surprise. Then, very slowly, a smile spread across his face. "You speak Mandarin?" he asked, switching languages himself. Jasmine blinked, then nodded modestly. "Yes, sir. I studied in Beijing for a year." "Impressive," he said warmly, his tone full of respect. "Your pronunciation is very good." A quiet murmur rippled through the other guests. The hostess whispered, "I had no idea she could do that." Jasmine felt her cheeks grow warm, but she remained professional. "Thank you, sir," she replied humbly. Mr. Li, the Tycoon, looked thoughtful. He seemed more interested in Jasmine than his meal now. "People often underestimate talent," he said softly, almost to himself. Mr. Collins, standing nearby, forced a nervous laugh. "Ah, yes, sir. Jasmine's full of surprises," he said quickly, trying to take credit for something he never even knew about. But Jasmine could sense his discomfort. His jaw was tight and his eyes were cold. He didn't like being overshadowed, especially not by her. The rest of the lunch continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Every time Jasmine passed by, she caught bits of Mandarin conversation between Mr. Li and his guests, and a couple of times he looked at her again with that same approving smile. After the Tycoon left, leaving a very generous tip, the restaurant finally relaxed. Everyone was whispering about what had just happened. Jasmine overheard one waiter say, "She's probably smarter than all of us," and another joked, "Maybe the boss will promote her now." But Mr. Collins was not amused. That evening, he called her into the back office. "So," he said sharply, pretending to shuffle papers, "you just had to show off in front of a millionaire, didn't you?" Jasmine was confused. "Show off? I only answered the phone, sir." The caller spoke Chinese. "You could have handed it to someone else," he interrupted. "You embarrassed me. You made me look unprepared." "I didn't mean to." She tried to explain, but he just waved his hand. "Enough, next time stick to your job. You're a waitress, not an interpreter." Jasmine stood there silently, feeling that familiar sting of injustice. The feeling of being put back in her place for doing something right. She nodded quietly. "Yes, sir," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. When she walked out of his office, her smile was gone for the first time that day. She felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. Pride for standing out and sadness for knowing that some people would never see her true worth. That night, as she lay in bed, She replayed the Tycoon's surprised and impressed face in her mind. Something told her this wasn't the end of the story, and she had no idea how right she was. The very next morning, her world was about to change forever. The morning sun peeked through the window, painting soft golden lines across Jasmine's small apartment. But she didn't notice. She sat quietly at her kitchen table, her mind replaying yesterday. The phone call, the Tycoon's surprised smile, and her manager's angry glare. For the first time in years, she had used the language she loved, the one that made her feel alive. But she had seen the look in Mr. Collins' eyes, and it warned of trouble. When she arrived at the restaurant, the air was thick with tension. People whispered in corners. Even the hostess gave her a quick nod and said, "That was really something yesterday, Jasmine." Jasmine smiled, but her stomach felt heavy. She could sense a storm brewing. Around noon, the Tycoon, Mr. Lee, returned. The restaurant buzzed with whispers again. Mr. Collins practically ran to greet him, forcing a cheerful laugh. But Mr. Lee's eyes were scanning the room. When he saw Jasmine, his face lit up. He waved her over. "Ah, Miss Jasmine," he said warmly. "I was hoping you'd be here." The staff froze. No customer ever asked for Jasmine by name. "I told my associates about you," he continued. "They didn't even believe a waitress here spoke Mandarin better than some of my own staff." He chuckled softly. "They want to hear for themselves." Jasmine's cheeks flushed. Mr. Lee gestured for her to join them and asked in Mandarin, "Tell me, how did you learn the language?" Jasmine replied fluently, explaining her year in Beijing and her love for the culture. The Tycoon and his guests listened intently, smiling with genuine respect. The restaurant fell silent, all eyes on Jasmine, her calm, confident voice filling the room. When she finished, the Tycoon clapped softly. "You're remarkable," he said sincerely. "Your attitude, your humility, you're wasted here. Someone like you deserves better opportunities." His words struck Jasmine's heart. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, her eyes glistening. The Tycoon turned to Mr. Collins. "You're lucky to have someone like her on your team." Mr. Collins laughed awkwardly, his eyes sharp with jealousy. After Mr. Lee left, Jasmine felt lighter than she had in months, but the joy didn't last. That evening, Mr. Collins called her into his office. "Close the door," he said, his voice cold. "You seem to enjoy attention, don't you?" He began, dripping with sarcasm. "You made me look foolish in front of one of our most important clients. Twice." "Sir, I was only helping." "Helping?" he scoffed. "You embarrassed this restaurant. You think speaking Chinese makes you special? You're not here to impress people, you're here to serve them." The words hit her like cold water. "I'm sorry if I overstepped, sir," she whispered. He leaned back in his chair. "You've become a distraction. This isn't the kind of attention we need. Consider this your final day." Her breath caught. "You're firing me?" He shrugged. "Let's call it letting you go." Jasmine's throat tightened, but she refused to cry in front of him. She simply nodded. "I understand." As she turned to leave, he added, "Next time, remember your place." Those words cut deeper than any knife. Jasmine walked out slowly, took off her apron, and placed it on the counter. The same counter where she had proudly spoken Chinese just a day before. She walked out into the cold evening air, her heart breaking. But beneath the pain, a spark of quiet determination began to grow. She didn't know it yet, but this moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. The moment she lost her job was the same moment destiny began to move in her favor. And the very man she had impressed was about to change her life forever. That night, rain poured over the city, soft but endless, as if the sky itself was weeping with her. Jasmine sat by her small window, staring at the empty, glistening street below. The neon lights blurred through her tears, and the world outside seemed to move on, completely uncaring. She felt hollow. For years she had worked harder than anyone. She had smiled through pain, endured insults, and carried her dignity like a crown. Yet, in a single day, she had lost everything. And not because she failed, but because she dared to shine. She replayed the conversation in her head, her manager's voice sharp and cold. "Remember your place." Those words haunted her. Her place, as he saw it, was to serve quietly, to never stand out, to never be more than what others assumed she was. But Jasmine knew she had done nothing wrong. She had only spoken in a language she loved, with kindness and respect. That wasn't arrogance, it was humanity. Still, it cost her the job she so desperately depended on. The next morning, whispers spread like wildfire through the restaurant. Some staff members pretended not to notice her absence. Others asked softly, "Did you hear what happened to Jasmine?" "She got fired," someone murmured. "The boss said she was showing off in front of the Tycoon." "That's ridiculous," another replied, defending her. "She was just helping." But Mr. Collins' version of the story traveled faster. "She disrespected management," he told the owners, his voice filled with false authority. "She caused unnecessary attention and disrupted the service." The truth was twisted into something ugly and unrecognizable. The whisper of jealousy was quiet, poisonous, and unstoppable. Sitting in his office, Mr. Collins couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The Tycoon eyes lighting up at Jasmine. His words, the genuine admiration in the air, the way she made him the manager fade into the background. It burned his pride like acid. For years, he had believed that control gave him power. Control over schedules, over staff, over who mattered and who didn't. But in a single moment, a young waitress had stolen the spotlight. And worse, she hadn't even tried. So he convinced himself that firing her was necessary, that he was simply protecting professional standards. But deep down, he knew the truth. It wasn't about rules, it was about pure, unadulterated envy. Meanwhile, Jasmine tried to stay strong. She updated her resume, visited nearby cafes, and asked about open positions. But every time she mentioned where she used to work, the owners hesitated. "Oh, Café Verlaine," they'd say. "We heard something about a conflict there." The whispers had reached far beyond the restaurant's walls. Mr. Collins had made sure of that. Days turned into a week. Jasmine's savings began to shrink. She skipped breakfast to save money and put on a brave face for her brother Marcus. "Just taking a little break from work," she'd tell him with a small, strained smile. He believed her, or at least he pretended to. One afternoon, she sat in a small park, watching people hurry by, all with somewhere to go, something to do. She wondered if her hard work would ever truly matter in a world that so often overlooked people like her. As she sat lost in thought, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered quietly. "Miss Jasmine?" a polite, unfamiliar man's voice said. "This is Daniel Wong, assistant to Mr. Lee." Her heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Lee, the Tycoon?" "Yes, ma'am. He asked me to reach out. He would like to meet with you tomorrow if you're available." For a moment, Jasmine couldn't speak. She was certain she had misheard. He wants to meet me?" "Yes. He said he'd like to discuss something important." She agreed instantly, her voice shaking slightly. "Yes, of course, I'll be there." When she hung up, tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. It was pure disbelief. After losing her job, her reputation, her peace of mind, maybe, just maybe, something good was waiting for her on the other side. That night, Jasmine barely slept. For the first time in days, she felt a small flame of hope flicker back to life. But while she prepared for a new beginning back at the restaurant, Mr. Collins was feeling uneasy. Word had reached him that the Tycoon had been asking about Jasmine. He tried to hide his worry behind sarcasm. "Probably wants to warn other businesses not to hire her," he muttered to himself. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. The same jealousy that had pushed him to fire her now made him restless and afraid. He had underestimated her, and now her name was being spoken in circles far above his own. Because while jealousy whispers behind closed doors, destiny speaks much louder. And Jasmine, the woman everyone had underestimated, was about to walk into a meeting that would rewrite her story forever. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Jasmine's curtains like a quiet blessing. She woke up early, her heart pounding with both nerves and excitement. She hadn't felt this alive in weeks. For once, she wasn't putting on her waitress uniform. She was putting on her best clothes, the ones she saved for special occasions. Standing in front of the mirror, she took a deep breath. Her reflection looked tired but strong. Her eyes had seen pain but still carried warmth. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, smoothing her hair. She didn't know what Mr. Lee wanted, but something inside her told her this meeting was more than just a coincidence. By the time she reached the elegant building downtown, her palms were slightly sweaty. The lobby was grand. Marble floors, glass walls, and a chandelier that sparkled like 1,000 tiny suns. It felt like another world, a world she had only ever served coffee to, never belonged in. "Good morning, Miss Jasmine," said a friendly receptionist. "Mr. Lee is expecting you." She was led into a quiet conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A few moments later, the door opened and Mr. Lee walked in, calm, confident, and smiling warmly. "Miss Jasmine," he greeted, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." "It's an honor, sir," she said softly, shaking his hand. He gestured for her to sit. "I'm sorry for what happened at the restaurant," he began. "I heard they let you go." "That was, unfortunate." Jasmine lowered her eyes. "It's all right, sir. I understand how things work sometimes." Mr. Lee leaned forward. "No, Jasmine. You shouldn't have to understand that kind of unfairness. You showed grace and professionalism. And what I saw in you, confidence, intelligence, and humility, that's rare." Her chest tightened. She had spent years waiting for someone to see her that way. He continued, "After that day, I asked about you. I learned your story, how you studied abroad, how you support your brother, how hard you've worked. You remind me of myself when I was young." Jasmine's eyes widened slightly. "Me? But sir, you're successful now, yes," he interrupted with a small laugh. "But I wasn't always. I started as a dishwasher in a restaurant in Shanghai. People laughed at my dreams too. Until one day someone believed in me." He paused, his tone softening. "Now it's my turn to believe in someone else." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. "Sir? What do you mean?" Mr. Lee smiled gently. "I want you to work for my company, not as a waitress, but as a cultural liaison. You'd help with our international clients, especially those from China. You already have the language, the grace, and the understanding." For a moment, Jasmine couldn't breathe. It felt unreal. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "Very serious," he said with a nod. "It won't be easy. You'll have to learn business etiquette, translation protocols, and corporate communication. But I'll make sure you get proper training. All I need from you is commitment." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She pressed her hands together and said, "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he replied simply, smiling. "Yes," she said without hesitation, her voice trembling with gratitude. 1,000 times yes. For the first time in a long time, Jasmine felt seen, truly seen, not as the black waitress, not as the girl who smiled too much, but as a woman of value and intelligence. They spoke for over an hour. Mr. Lee gave her an overview of the role, the office environment, and her starting salary, more than double what she had earned at the restaurant. She tried to stay calm, but her heart was racing with joy. Before she left, he said something she would never forget. "Never let small minds convince you that you are too much. When people are threatened by your light, it's only because it reminds them of their own darkness." Those words sank deep into her soul. When Jasmine stepped outside, the city looked different. The same streets that once felt cold now felt alive with possibility. The same sky that once looked gray now seemed full of color. She took a long breath and smiled to herself. This time not the practiced smile she wore for others, but a real one. One that came from victory, from pride, from finally being free. Later that day, she returned home and hugged her brother Marcus tightly. "Guess what?" she whispered. "Your sister got a new job." Marcus laughed, shocked and thrilled. "Are you serious? That's amazing. Where?" She smiled. At a real company, with real people who believe in me. He grinned. You see? I told you good things were coming. That night, as Jasmine lay in bed, she thought about everything. The insults, the firing, the tears, the endless shifts. It all suddenly made sense. Sometimes life had to break you before it opened a new door. She realized something powerful. The world had tried to silence her, but her voice had found a way to rise anyway. What had started as the worst week of her life was now turning into a miracle she never expected. Jasmine stood before the gleaming glass skyscraper, a world away from the clatter of the coffee shop she'd left behind. Just days ago, she was serving lattes. Now, she was stepping into an office buzzing with opportunity. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the elevator whisked her up to the 14th floor. With each passing number, it felt like a layer of her old life was peeling away. When the doors slid open, she was met with pristine white walls, elegant decor, and the soft murmur of business being conducted in multiple languages. Good morning, Miss Jasmine, a warm voice said. It was Daniel, Mr. Lee's assistant. We've been expecting you. He handed her a badge. Jasmine Carter, Cultural Liaison Assistant. Seeing her name printed so formally made her chest tighten. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't just a waitress. She was someone who mattered. Her first days were a whirlwind of training sessions, meeting new colleagues, and translating documents. Everyone was polite, respectful, and surprisingly supportive. When they learned she'd been a waitress, they weren't judgmental. They were impressed. You're proof that hard work pays off, one of them told her. Jasmine smiled. Maybe it's not just hard work, she replied softly. Maybe it's believing in yourself even when no one else does. At night, she'd return home, tired but fulfilled, to cook dinner for her brother Marcus. He'd listen with wide, proud eyes as she shared stories about her new job. But one evening, something on her phone made her stop cold. A news headline. Tycoon hires fired waitress after witnessing her speak fluent Chinese. The article detailed everything: the unfair dismissal, Mr. Lee's intervention, her new beginning. At first, Jasmine felt a wave of shyness. But then, the messages started flooding in. Strangers from all over the world. You're an inspiration. Your story made me cry. You give me hope. Her story had gone viral. News outlets were calling her the waitress who turned prejudice into purpose. Jazz, you're trending, Marcus shouted, waving his phone in disbelief. Jasmine laughed, but deep down her heart swelled with a profound sense of gratitude. All the pain, the sleepless nights, and the insults had transformed into something powerful. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Mr. Collins nearly dropped his coffee when he saw the headline. His face went pale as he read the article, his hands trembling. His phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from the owners demanding an explanation. He had no excuse. His jealousy hadn't just cost him a good employee, it had cost him his dignity. While Jasmine's star was rising, his world was collapsing. A week later, Mr. Lee invited Jasmine to his private office. Congratulations, he said with his usual calm smile, handing her a newspaper clipping. You've become quite the symbol of hope. Jasmine blushed. I didn't expect any of this, sir. I just wanted to do the right thing. Mr. Lee nodded. And that's exactly why people are inspired. The world needs stories like yours. Stories that remind us to look beyond labels. He paused, looking out at the city skyline. Do you know what I admire most about you? You never fought for attention. You let your actions speak. That's rare. His words brought tears to her eyes. I've decided to promote you, Jasmine, he continued. You'll now work directly with our international partners. It's a lot of responsibility, but I believe you're ready. Jasmine was stunned into silence for a moment before whispering, Thank you, sir, I won't let you down. He smiled kindly. I know you won't. Walking home that night, the city lights seemed to shine just for her. She stopped at the small park bench where she once sat and cried, feeling hopeless. Now it felt like a monument to her victory. She took a deep breath and whispered to the wind, Thank you for not giving up on me. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. Her journey wasn't about luck. It was about the courage to stand tall when the world tries to push you down. And as she smiled, she thought, maybe this is what destiny really looks like. Not perfect, but beautiful in its own way.